If you're a Jeep fan, you probably know that the 2025 Wrangler Rubicon 392 Final Edition is good news and bad news. The bad news is that anyone who bought one of the 2024 Final Editions thinking those were the end of the Hemi-powered factory Jeep was wrong. The good news is that those who missed out on the original production run have a chance to buy their very own Rubicon 392. In 2021, Jeep introduced the 6.4-liter Hemi-powered Wrangler Rubicon 392, calling it the quickest, most powerful Wrangler yet. With 470 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, it was capable of ripping to 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds and tearing through the quarter mile in 13 seconds flat. Just 3 years later, Jeep announced that it would be ending production of the Rubicon 392 with 3,700 final editions, 3,300 for the US, 300 for Canada, and 100 for the rest of the world. Like its predecessor, the 2025 model has the big Hemi up front and an array of cosmetic, interior, and off-road performance upgrades, but only the first final edition got the Mopar triple loop grille guard and Mopar Jeep 83-piece toolkit. Although you can buy a $525 Mopar toolkit for the 25 model on the build and price section of the Jeep website. The Wrangler Rubicon 392 has never been cheap, but over time it's gotten even more expensive. According to the window sticker for my review vehicle, it has a base price of $99,995. Adding Hydro Blue Pearl Coat paint, the Sky One Touch power top, and the Mopar air compressor took its as-tested price up to $108,475, more than the MSRP of the luxurious Grand Wagoneer Series 3, which comes in at $107,945. Given that 2025 is a carryover year for the Wrangler Rubicon 392 Final Edition, there are no major updates, but there's a lot to it. So let's get into what makes this special Wrangler so nice that Jeep had to make it twice. The 2024 model year brought a lot of upgrades to the entire Wrangler lineup as well as the Rubicon 392, many of which you'll see as I show you around the exterior. Up front, it's equipped with a steel bumper with removable end caps to give the front tires more room to work. In between the LED fog lights and the bronze tow hooks is an 8,000-pound Warn winch. The LED headlights curve into the 7-slot grille, which integrates the front off-road camera. You see this hood scoop right here in the middle? Well, it not only looks cool, but it's actually functional, unlike the scoops on a lot of other vehicles. So this is connected to Jeep's HydroGuide air intake system. And this uses a series of ducts and drains to separate up to 15 gallons of water per minute from the intake air. And behind that, you've got the special hood decal that cuts glare, and then these engine call-out badges, as if you needed a reminder of what's under the hood of this monster when it's running. Jeep matches the Rubicon 392's big power with big tires. The bronze 18-inch beadlock capable wheels are encased in beefy 35-inch BF Goodrich KO2s. This next section has a lot of components in it that are hard to see from a distance, but I definitely have to mention them. To give the 392 maximum articulation, Jeep installed its electronic sway bar disconnect feature up front. It also knew that the Wrangler 392 was going to have to handle a lot of power, so it beefed up the frame rails, the front upper control arms, and installed cast iron steering knuckles. Behind the 18-inch wheels are 12.9-inch vented rotors up front and 14-inch rotors in the rear. To put that into perspective, the wheels on my 1998 Acura Integra sedan were 14 inches. There are Dana 44s at both ends with lockers, of course, and the 456 rear end is a full float setup. As far as towing, the Wrangler 392 is rated for a maximum of 3,500 pounds. And of course, no monster Jeep would be complete without a lift. Now, earlier versions of the Wrangler Rubicon 392 already had a 2-inch suspension lift, but for the 2 years of the final edition, sounds kind of silly, right? 2 years of the final edition, Jeep boosted that by 1/2 inch. So
The 2024 and 2025 model have 11.6 inches of ground clearance and 34.5 inches of water fording capability. If the rocks get a little too close on either side, the rock rails should provide some peace of mind.
I normally associate body color fenders on a Wrangler with the more upscale Sahara model, but I can see why Jeep went with them on the Rubicon 392. They make it look wider and better proportioned. The black fender flares give it even broader shoulders while offering some protection from what the tires fling back.
And right here, there's another special decal for the final edition. And I never thought I would point out the windshield on a review vehicle, but on this one, I definitely have to mention it because this is made out of Corning Gorilla Glass, which makes it more resistant to chips, cracks, and fractures, making it great for off-roading, but also for driving on-road in Phoenix because a lot of stuff flies up off the pavement.
By far, the most expensive option on my test vehicle is the nearly $4,000 power retractable top. You just hit a button and the soft top pulls back within the side rails. For even more ventilation, you can take out the rear quarter windows. Yes, you can take the entire roof off just as you can with other Wranglers, but it's a little more involved and you need to be careful not to damage the top. Short of messing with all that, you can just take off the doors to let in even more of the sounds and scents of nature while you're driving through it.
At the rear, there's this flip-up glass panel, which you can actually flip up once you get this reinforced swing gate with a full-size spare tire out of the way. Once you're back here, you'll see there's a flip-down table integrated, so you can use this for preparing meals or making small repairs on the trail. My test vehicle also has the optional Mopar onboard air compressor, which I actually got some use out of going to the Four Peaks Trail in Arizona's Tonto National Forest. Now, of course, before we started out to get maximum grip, we aired the tires down first, and we were able to do that 2 at a time. Now, one little issue was the PSI rating that we got here on this gauge was slightly different from what was shown in the multi-information display in the cabin, but the main issue was when we needed to air up to hit the road back home. So when we were up in Four Peaks seeing the sights, it was about 90 degrees. It had cooled off significantly, but by the time we got down to the bottom of the trail and we were ready to go home, it was over 100 degrees. And we were trying to air up the driver's side first, 2 tires at a time. The recommended PSI is 37. We got it from about 20 to 34 before the compressor shut off. We gave it a little rest and then we hit the passenger side. We took that from about 20 to 30 before the compressor shut off again. Clearly the heat was pretty bad, but I think also if we had maybe aired 1 tire up at a time, maybe that would have taken it a little easier on the compressor. But ultimately, as cool as this was, it got us most of the way there when we needed to air up, but we ended up having to go to a nearby gas station to get all 4 tires to 37 PSI.
There's no denying the Rubicon 392 is an absolutely bonkers vehicle, but technically it could be even crazier. Jeep leveled up from the 5.7-liter Hemi V8 to the 6.4, yet stopped short of stuffing a Hellcat under the hood. Just as before, the 392 cranks out 470 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, which it routes through an 8-speed automatic and Selec-Trac full-time 4-wheel drive.
It's a bit of a hike getting up into the cabin of the Rubicon 392, but once you're here, you see you're surrounded by a lot of black, which is broken up by metallic accents, Mayan gold stitching in certain areas like the steering wheel, and what Jeep calls Tupelo highlights. There are also a lot of comfort and convenience features. So this leather-wrapped steering wheel has the contrast stitching, which I pointed out earlier, as well as the controls for the adaptive cruise control, the Alpine audio system, and these paddle shifters behind it. So when Jeep introduced these on the original Rubicon 392, they were a first for the Wrangler lineup. Behind that, you've got an analog tachometer, speedometer, and in the middle, a digital multi-information display where you can see your fuel level, fuel range, and fuel economy. And just so you know, right now we've been doing a lot of low-speed city driving as part of the filming, and right now it is showing we are averaging 9.4 miles per gallon. Yeah, Up here you have the one-touch controls for the retractable power roof that just slides back in these rails to the very back to give you an open-air driving experience. I was fortunate enough to be at the media launch of the JL Wrangler for the 2018 model year. So that gives you an idea of how long this generation has been around. The 2025 model year is 8 years into this generation of the Wrangler. Time just flies. So with that comes a lack of certain technological updates. A lot of vehicles these days at least offer a rear view mirror camera, but you can't get one in the Wrangler Rubicon 392, which is unfortunate because the rear headrests and that massive spare tire in the back eat up a lot of rearward visibility. Fortunately, the infotainment setup is much more up to date. It's Uconnect 5 with a 12.3-inch touchscreen, and you've got the basic features, of course, you know, media, HVAC, things like that, wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and then you've got these more off-road focused features. So as you can see on the menu here, you can access off-road pages, GPS trail logs, and actually record your runs and see your pitch and roll. And then there's this adventure guides feature that's available, so you can see the trails near you and things like that. You can also use this screen to access this feature that my friends and I got some use out on Four Peaks. So if you're coming up on a rise and you want to see as much as possible what lies ahead of you, because this hood is hard to see over, you can use this front mounted camera and it gives you your trajectory lines. And should you happen to get the front camera dirty, which is easy to do when you're off-roading, you can hit this little touchscreen button and wash not only the camera, but the rear window and get the wiper going at the same time.
In the middle are the main audio and HVAC controls, as well as the button to turn on the active exhaust system, something I've left on the majority of my time in the Rubicon 392. Further down are the power window switches and the various charging ports, which brings me to another sign of the JL Wrangler's age, the lack of a wireless charging pad. That's actually a good thing though. As you can see, there's not a lot of space on the center console, so I'm glad Jeep didn't jam a charging pad in some hard-to-reach spot that's awkward to use.
Down here at the very bottom, you have the command center for all the off-road controls in the Rubicon 392. On the left, you've got the switch for the front and rear lockers. Next to that is the button for the off-road plus mode. So you can use that when you're doing high-speed sand driving or low-speed rock crawling, and it'll adjust things like the throttle, the shift points, the traction control to make those driving experiences better for you. And then below that is the sway bar disconnect feature, which I talked about on the exterior. And to the right are these auxiliary buttons for things that you want to add to the Jeep. So like an auxiliary light bar, you can connect it to one of these and just fire it up with the push of a button. If you're familiar with Wrangler Rubicons, you'll know that Jeep keeps things pretty old school. So instead of using a dial for the transfer case, it uses this manual lever, which, you know, is very butch. You really have to muscle it into place, and you've got the various positions marked here. So this has a 4-high auto setting. Of course, you can throw it into just regular 4-high part-time, and then of course 4-low. And to the right of that, you've got the shifter for the 8-speed automatic, which is topped with a special Rubicon 392 Final Edition badge. There is a surprising amount of legroom in the second row. And there's also some nice convenience features for second row passengers. So there's a pair of HVAC vents, power window controls, different charging options, and 2 very small open storage areas. I don't know exactly what you can put there, but if you do have something small and you don't want it in your pocket or rattling around, you can put it in one of those. And then there's seating for 3 across, but if it just happens to be you and one other passenger, you can fold down this center seat back and headrest, and you've got a pair of cup holders.
The rear charging area has a 12-volt charging port, tie-down loops, and the subwoofer. Underneath a flip-up panel is a storage compartment with room for the door hinge bolts and the gear for the winch and air compressor. There was plenty of space in the back for my hard-sided camera case, a small styrofoam cooler, and even a small load of groceries.
Driving the Rubicon 392 reminds me of stand-up comedy. Now, I don't know about you, But to me, stand-up comedy doesn't have to be sophisticated or highbrow to make me laugh. Funny is funny. And it's similar in the Rubicon 392. You know, this is a big, hulking, loud, V8 powered, body on frame, off-road vehicle. So it's not terribly refined or sophisticated, but that doesn't matter. You know, it still makes me smile when I put my foot down, like I'm gonna do right now. And keep in mind, that's with the active exhaust closed. So what I'm gonna do now is open it up. And I gotta say this before I give it another pull. When you have the active exhaust off, the engine, the exhaust doesn't boom, it doesn't drone. Like, you're aware you're driving a V8 powered vehicle, but it's not obnoxious. Now, when you open up the system, it's a lot more vocal. You know, you're definitely aware of what's going on, and so is everybody else. Oh boy. Yeah, I would say the majority of the time I've been in this vehicle, I've had the active exhaust on for obvious reasons. Now, I've got to say, one of the great things about having that big Hemi up front is that it's not just powerful on paper. You know, when you put your foot down, the transmission just jumps down to let it rip. You know, it was surprisingly responsive. But the flip side is, even though you've got 470 horsepower and, you know, this manic acceleration, the Rubicon 392, aside from that, doesn't really feel all that sporty. You know, definitely not the suspension or the steering. You know, the steering is heavy, it's not very communicative, and in a straight line, of course, the Rubicon 392 is a real hoot, like this. But in the curves, you know, I am keenly aware of just how tall and heavy this thing is. So it has sports car power, it has sports car sound, but overall it doesn't drive like a sporty athletic vehicle. It drives like a really powerful Wrangler. And in terms of the ride quality, that's kind of a plus in a weird way, because I've driven a lot of JL Wranglers, I've driven the regular Rubicon, and they all more or less kind of ride the same, you know, body on frame, four-wheel drive. So they have a stiff ride quality. They're definitely not cushy. And I thought before getting into the Rubicon 392 that it would be brutal, you know, with the 35s and all that. I thought it would just be super stiff, brutal, but really it's not that much different from, you know, the regular Rubicon as far as my recollection. It's been a few years, but yeah, this is not wildly different from what I'm used to in other JL Wranglers. So in a way, you know, that's a good thing.
One of the main components of a Jeep, especially the Wrangler, is history. And my adventure with Brad and Chris connected us and the Rubicon 392 to it. I realized that over the past several decades, thousands of people have had similar experiences in V8 powered CJs while surrounded by the majestic beauty of nature. Jeep didn't offer a V8 in the Wrangler from the time it debuted as a 1987 model until 2021, when it released the first version of the Rubicon 392. Despite all the changes in its parent company's international corporate alliances, Jeep's 2025 Wrangler Rubicon 392 Final Edition is a loud, powerful, rugged, undeniably American vehicle that links Jeep to its heritage in a way that its other vehicles can't. It's too bad it's prohibitively expensive to most typical Wrangler buyers. The good news is that it doesn't look like the 392 is going anywhere anytime soon, which means this second final edition is not so final. And it seems as if other Hemis might be available in the Wrangler in the future. Perhaps a 5.7-liter Hemi-powered Wrangler will strike a realistic balance between accessibility and acceleration.